Hey everybody. Okay, so now we move on to the next step, which is actually running the business, actually operating the startup. And so the first step here is business modeling. We basically just want to jot down all our assumptions on paper so that we can systematically validate them, rather than keeping them in our heads, which makes it harder to test. So we'll use the lean canvas for that, which is a visual representation of the business model, which makes it easy to make changes to. And then there's three more things. One is about desirability, which is about early adopters and existing alternatives and switching triggers. But the next two that are the most important, I mean, that's actually still critical for the initial targeting and stuff, but more of a model though is the Fermi estimate, which is just whether the startup works on paper. If it doesn't work on paper, then we don't want to actually run it. And then the most important of them all is the traction roadmap, which is basically how many traction is a measure of customers and growth. So how many customers you need at every month to meet your criteria to justify working on this business, right? You might say that I only want to work on this business if it's going to generate X dollars per year, right? Could be $1 million or 10 million or just 100,000. But if it's not reaching that, then you shouldn't be working on that business, right? So we want to define what our minimum success criteria is and then work backwards to determine how many customers we need at each month. And if we're not hitting those goals, then we pivot away or just abandon the business after sufficient time. And this tool keeps you externally accountable, and that's basically your measure. And if you work in these 90-day cycles, where at the end of every 90 days you measure whether you're on track, then you can either continue or pivot accordingly. And like a big complaint is that businesses don't pivot soon enough. Okay, so the article I wrote gives you the general framework for how to go about filling out these tools, filling out these models. And now we're gonna, so go ahead and read that, it's in the description. And then now we're gonna actually do it for the startup I'm running, Autonomous Self. So I'll show you all the assumptions I've listed out and all the modeling and traction roadmap stuff. And then after that, then we'll kick off the first 90-day cycle, which is getting the problem solution fit, which is achieving our month 3 traction goals through pre-orders or signups, like credit card, entered free trials, just basically some form of commitment. And so we're selling the demo, right? Because basically before you buy anything, you're reading what the offering is, like you're reading what you're going to buy. So the first step to actually going through with using something is figuring out what it is that you're going to use and deciding that you're going to use this thing. So we can split up the milestone there, right? In between the step, like after you've decided you want to use this and before you've actually used it, that's where we're going to define the milestone. And so you can do this through pre-orders or number of signups, or there's all sorts of proxy measurements. And so we want to achieve our traction roadmap goal by selling this thing that we have not yet built. And that's our 90-day goal, and then we'll go through all the steps getting there. Okay, so now let's just hop on over to my computer and I'll show you all the models that I built for Autonomous Self. Okay, so now we're on my computer. We'll look at all the business modeling tools. So we'll start the lean canvas. And so here's a little template that I just took from the internet. You can just take anything, and then I filled them in. So here's like the first lean canvas I made, which is giant because it includes all sorts of customer segments. And then I split them up into smaller lean canvases per segment, just because it felt necessary. Okay, so honestly, you can just pause this and read it. I won't go through most of it, but I'll talk about the stuff that I think is important. Um, so first, we'll just start with the customer segments. Um, so basically, the like the existing so basically the idea of this whole thing is here. I'll start there just so that you have some frame of reference. So it's basically building some system of habit science and technology that ensures you perform all the daily tasks you want to perform with zero deviations or with as much deviation as you want. And it's like a system that enforces action and habits better than you can yourself, solving the execution problem, like an operating system for your ideal self, autopilot for human behavior, that kind of thing. Okay, so as for customer segments, so initially you might be inclined to think everyone, like most first-time founders, thought is everyone is a user of their business. The thing is, like, there's always going to be early adopters and mainstream consumers and laggards, and so there's going to be people who don't want to use your thing, um, and people don't even like think that the problem you're solving is a problem for them. Um, so so the space that you're working with is much smaller, and then there's even further restrictions to that based on the solution that you choose and stuff like that. So, but whatever. If you don't think that's the case, then you can write out your customer segments and you can go about tackling them, and you'll find out empirically whether people want to use it or not. Um, the other thing is when you try to reach everyone, you reach no one. So it's better to have more precise targeting so that you nail problems more precisely. They're more gravitated to listening to you. Okay, so typically the early adopters that you're looking for are using existing alternatives. So these are existing habit apps like Forfeit and BeMinder, and I've listed a couple here. So that's always like an initial good customer segment. Another one is like people that do Blueprint, like Brian Johnson's Blueprint. And this is kind of my use case. This is why I thought of it. Um, and yeah, I guess I can just mention. So basically, the story goes Brian Johnson was taking a flying lesson, and he had the plane on autopilot and noticed that the plane was flying itself better than he could fly it. And then he asked himself, I wonder if I could build a system that takes better care of me than I can myself in regards to health. And then that's when he does this thing where he queries his organs and takes these biomeasurements, and that's what's dictating what he eats, when he eats, and all that stuff, rather than his mind deciding. And so he's removing his mind from his body, etc. And then I said, why can't you do the same thing, not just for health, but for everything? Um, like basically any habit, like exercise and sleep and food, sure, but also work and reading and meditating and any activity that you want to be doing. Um, so so that's my use case. So I think a lot of the Blueprint adherents, people that follow these kinds of things, people that purchase his things, I think that's going to be initial customer segment. And another thing is like there are you get to decide which customers you want to work with, and you want to work with the ones that you like. And I like this kind of crowd of people. And another big one is entrepreneurs, like entrepreneurs who just want to put in deep work. And then there's like the biohackers and the cold plungers. Students is another ones. People that just want to be more consistent going to the gym. That's like a huge use case, huge clear problem. Weight lossers, I guess smokers too, sleep, deep work, etc. Okay, this early adopter section here where I listed these characteristics, this is not really how you do this. This is like too much of a restriction on the space. Um, but they're mainly people that have some sort of switching trigger um, and are using some existing alternative. But so these customer segments is like there's so many different ones here. The channels to reach them are so different. Their specific problems are different. It's worth splitting these up into different lean canvases, which we're about to do. But I do want to say that like one of these markets is probably going to be the beachhead, that small pond that you expand from to tackle the other markets. So problem-wise, it's like it's hard to stay consistent with habits. Like it falls after some time. And then I think like a fundamental issue is that you're composed of two selves. One, I call yourself your long-term thinking self. This is what you think of you mostly. And then there's monkey you, which is like mainly in your limbic system, and it just comes online every so often and derails you. And when it's time to like perform actions or habits, he said, I don't give a fuck. Like, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to do this other thing that I'd rather do, which is like not aligned with what long-term thinking wants you to do and like inflicts violence on long-term thinking you. And then for the existing alternatives, like some of them just track or recommend and they don't enforce, and the ones that do enforce work on positive punishment, which like does work but has low retention. You typically want to get out of a system that has positive punishment, and instead like positive reinforcement is the best way to drive long-term behavior. And of course that's an assumption here. So yeah, so existing alternative, willpower, atomic habits, and then there's a bunch of apps and screen time apps and stuff like that. And so yeah, basically building atomic habits in software and hardware, doing this stuff, my 300-pound man analogy. So all the stuff that's relevant specifically to autonomous self, I'll talk about in a different series. This is more about operating the startup. And then pricing, there will probably be like a $20 a month offering, a $200 a month offering, and then probably we start here with this $20 or $100 or $200 a month offering. That's like the main thing for a long time. And then we either go downward to bring more people into the value ladder, or we go upward to ascend some people to higher COV offerings, and we'll figure that out at that time. But this is like basically along the value ladder. Yeah, okay, so now let's just like split up these lean canvases. So let's start with the habit app users. And by the way, like the second business modeling tool where you test for desirability, where it talks about early adopters and switching triggers and existing alternatives, that's sort of like baked in here, so we're just going to skip that. The switching trigger stuff, like I actually don't know those, so those are things I need to figure out. And existing alternatives are my imaginations. Oh, actually one thing I do want to talk about are the channels. That's super important. Typically you go customer segment, channels, or channels, customer segments, problem, existing alternatives, UVP, solutions, revenue streams, cost structures, key metrics, unfair range. Okay, so channels. So this is an indication that I need to split up the lean canvas. So like each of these following apply for the system in general, but then to a specific problem like sleep or going to the gym or blueprint or whatever. So and I order this from like what I would probably be starting with all the way to the most scalable kind of thing. So just DMs on forums, there's offline events like going to Don't Die events and startup meetups for entrepreneurs, and just going to a sauna place or a cold plunge place and talking to people there. Like offline events are probably the best because you can basically guarantee customer conversations and instantly. Running social ads, Instagram, Reddit is a good channel. Content marketing, that'll probably bring a lot. SEO, but engineering is marketing, so you have these lead magnets for like solving a specific problem like sleep or whatever. Blog, social influencers, SEO, referral baked into the product, search engine marketing, and then yeah, actually working with BJ would be great. Okay, so realistically, what I'll probably do is start with the habit app users. So I actually didn't split all the customer segments into different lean canvases, just the ones that I found the most compelling. So first, habit app users, so specifically the ones that pay for them, and I'm thinking like Forfeit and BeMinder. These other ones, not so much. Password Locker is something that I've built, password-locker.com, and I know there are users that use like some of these other apps, so that would be a channel. But I'm not going to rely on that fully, and also like this is supposed to be teaching oriented as well, so like I'm making the assumption that you don't have another base of users to work with, so yeah, so a small number of like initial customer conversations will come from there. Okay, and then so DMing on Reddit related forums, Reddit ads, great, like really low cost per clicks, which is unbelievable. Like I think Reddit is one of these, is like a growing ad platform that's underrated now and hasn't yet suffered the law of shitty click-throughs, and it'll probably be big later. And it's like perfect for small scale testing. Okay, social ads, Google ads, targeting blogs, SEO, influencers. And by the way, like there's this book called Traction by Gabe Weinberg. He basically lists these 19 different marketing channels, and these are great ways to source where you can acquire customers from. $100 million leads is similar. It's just a different representation of similar information, although it's more broad, it covers more things, so it's less focused on that specific task of, or that specific topic of channels that you can acquire customers from. And yeah, and Traction gives you a good framework for thinking about it, how you should go about finding channels and testing them, and then go deep dives into each of the channels. So number one, habit app, like these are my initial, so these are the initial things I'm going to be doing, like through these channels, trying to find customers that use these existing alternatives, preferably pay for them, and then just trying to talk to them and figure out what their problems are, and not like phrasing it as a problem, but just understanding their workflow and seeing if there are problems in these workflows that are big enough worth solving. Okay. And then the other one is the blueprint customer segment. And so, yeah, so their problem is like the initial motivation, like their switching trigger is basically the awareness event of of blueprint and like solving for your pace of aging and not dying basically, and just like maximizing the value of your engine of perception. Anyway, so people like execute blueprint, like the sleep, diet, exercise, supplements, measuring all that stuff, and then it like falls off because of interruptions, like the cues change, circumstances change, maybe you just don't have motivation anymore. And I don't know the existing alternatives, like we're gonna figure this out. Like maybe this is not a great segment, maybe it is, I don't know. But like I have a feeling like these kinds of people are easier to reach, I think, and it's my use case for building this, and I like working with those people. So I think this really is going to be an initial customer segment, and like this is probably a pretty good one. And expanding from here to those other markets would be like phenomenal. So Discord DMs, Reddit DMs, Reddit ads on like the Blueprint subreddit. Sure, there are like posts you can make. And then the app, the meetups, longevity groups like on meetup.com, those exist. Social ads, Google ads for it, YouTube ads, like assuming I'm making some content and then like delivering value with the ads. Content marketing, all this stuff. And starting blogs and BJ himself, all that stuff. So, yeah. And so then I have entrepreneurs one here. I think I'm basically gonna tackle these first two, the habit apps and the blueprint stuff. I think this one I might not come to. Like even entrepreneurs is kind of big. Like it'd be good to break this apart. But like their problem is they're either like super successful and busy and don't work out, like they don't have time to carve out for gym exercise or like going to sleep on time, and they're just freaking depressed or whatever. Like that's a big problem. And then there's another version where like they're just starting out and they need to start putting in their 12-hour days and every day for years. And so those people who want to put more hours in than they are and just need some system to get them to, right? So like these are two different people. And sure. So entrepreneur meetups, social ads, content marketing, SEO. And like basically one of the reasons why I'm making this whole series is because I imagine maybe not at the start, but at some point like entrepreneurs will be a big segment. And so this is basically content marketing to bring in those leads, and then some percent of them get funneled over to using this stuff. Like the idea is like like all human activity comes down to two tasks. One is like thinking about what you're going to do, and two is actually executing on it. Like all this stuff, like all the stuff that I'm like teaching and showing is the information. It all falls under the thinking section. And then for you to actually execute, then you funnel over, ascend the value ladder, and then use the software. And so, and like a nice, really good thing is like the marginal cost of information is zero. It costs $0 to basically deliver information to one additional person, right? Like if you have a YouTube video explaining stuff, one additional view costs nothing. Um, and so because it's so cheap, you can deliver value at such a low cost that you can get a bunch of leads in. You're delivering value to a bunch of leads and then funneling some of them. And like some people will actually sell information and the profit margins are huge because, like we said, the costs are so small. And so like information businesses are good until someone then gives away all the stuff, all that information that you're charging for free. And they're giving them away for free because they're using it as a lead magnet for their other offerings that are more expensive, and they're more expensive because they provide a lot more value. And so that's the frame that I'm taking, where all the thinking, like how to think, we'll probably get there, and the like business strategy and just like all sorts of information, free information, useful information is just going to be free, given out. That'll be a lead magnet, and then funnel people over to like this other thing, like this system that lets you execute. Okay. So, and I'm not going to even bother opening that one. So those are basically lean canvases. So our goal is to systematically basically validate these assumptions. And yeah, the lean canvas will change over time. But this is our business model. Like this whole thing right here, this one page visual representation, this concise thing, is our business model. Yeah. And we want to make it so that all the boxes are modified until they're all true, and the resulting set is a repeatable, profitable, scalable business model. Okay, so the next step is basically running a Fermi estimate, which is just like a back of the napkin on the scale of order of magnitudes calculation for whether your business can work, even on paper. Like if it doesn't work on paper, then we definitely shouldn't run it in the real world. And it's also good to do this step because you might operate the business, like maybe let's suppose you skip the step, you operate the business for a few months, and then you realize that the volume of customers that are out there are simply not enough for you to like make it worthwhile. And like one thing to think about is that it's not just how many customers you need and whether that number exists out in the world, in the real world, but whether 100 times that number exists out in the real world, because you're going to convert your leads at like a 1% conversion rate. And so you need 100 times the number of customers that you'll actually be serving visiting your site. So like this step can cripple lots of businesses. So it's important and doesn't take very long. Okay, so in the article that I wrote, I describe how to go through this process, and this is just specifically for autonomous self. So first you define your minimum success criteria, which is basically at year 3. So if you suppose that PMF, product market fit, occurs at year 2, and a year later where the unit economics is fairly understood and the business is predictable, how much do you want to be making? And you want to think in orders of magnitude here, like 100 grand a year, a million a year, 10 million a year. And so I just picked 10 million. Probably like 2, 3, 4 is probably fine. But there's this like decent book, it's like okay book called 10X Rule. And I think that's a good framework of thinking about this stuff. Like it's good to upsize your goal a little bit because 1, maybe you'll under deliver, but 2, when you make the goal more ambitious, you work harder. And when you make the goal less ambitious, then you don't give it your all. And when that happens, you usually fail. So you really want to be in this like Goldilocks zone where your whole being is like devoted to this mission. Okay, so that's the minimum success criteria, right? That is the minimum goal that we need to achieve to justify our working on this business. And if this business, like on paper, does not deliver that minimum success criteria, then we should discard this business idea and work on something else. Okay, so one way, or so like the first calculation that you want to calculate is the number of active customers. So you just take your minimum success criteria at year 3 and your yearly price. So in my case, I assume that the main offering is like $100 a month. In the beginning, I don't think I can charge that much, maybe $20 a month. So for all of these, I've like calculated it twice for both of these price points, but let's just carry with the $20 a month price. So the active customers at year 3, given a 10 million a year revenue goal with a 200 a year yearly price, comes out to 50,000 customers. Um, and then the next thing, so now assuming you're at equilibrium, every business has churn. This ranges like 1 to 10%. And um, there's a little table you can use for figuring out based on the expected customer lifetime, which is dependent on the industry, what your monthly churn rate would be. So like around 3% is a good number. So I need to acquire 1,500 customers a month just to maintain. Um, and the number of leads to get there, assuming a 1% conversion rate, and that's standard, right? Like from an unaware visitor coming to your site all the way to them purchasing, 1% of users will do that. 1 in 100 leads will do that. And that's like standard across businesses. And this range is like 1 to 5%. So for me to maintain my business at 1,500 customers a month, I need to have 150,000 leads a month, right? And so these numbers are getting big, and um, like what you would do next is see whether that customer segment simply has enough volume to satisfy this, right? And then I'm going to skip this for a second. We're going to come back to that. So referral will help, right? Because you don't have to acquire all these customers yourself. Some of your customers will acquire other customers. And so like a 20% referral rate is kind of common. 40% is like PMF territory. 70% plus is extraordinary. And then like over 1 is obviously viral and like very rare, and you basically have to have like a completely social product for that to happen. So I'm being a little aggressive here with the 40%. There's like referral baked in, sort of. So instead of 150,000 leads a month, I really only need to acquire 90,000. But this one, I think, so everything else from now on is like outside Ash's book. And by the way, everything that we're doing here is from Ash Maurya's Running Lean 3rd edition. But this stuff is like stuff that I wanted to know. So basically, like, so everything we talked about is assuming you're at equilibrium, like how many leads you need just to maintain. This is like cumulative over the lifetime of your business. So for 50,000 customers, you need 5 million leads over 3 years, which coincidentally also becomes 150K leads per month. But do 5 million people even exist in your customer segment? And so I just looked at entrepreneurs, for example, which is one segment. So there's 2 to 4 million entrepreneurs, which is fine. And then like Blueprint, there's like a million, I think about 1 million people have purchased Brian Johnson Blueprint products. The Habit app users is like much smaller. There's like all these other customer segments, like going to the gym and stuff. So like I'm actually not concerned here. So like I should be good. But this step can definitely cripple businesses. And then we'll talk about that in a sec, how to solve for that. The other thing that you should do, so you want to look at volume, but you also want to look at like through the channel. Like this is just exists, but then these are the ones that are reachable, like through the channel. And then whether it's even profitable. So like given a volume of users on a channel, what is their cost to acquire? And then given some conversion rate, suppose 1%, and given your CLV, is it even a profitable venture, right? Because like, let's say I need to acquire 5 million leads, right? And there are, let's say, 10 million people out there, which is great, which would be great. But given the channel calculations and given like how much I charge, maybe I would be unprofitable with this channel. And so like that would not be viable. And like maybe there are other channels that would work, but you should have that on paper that you can, that there is a channel that would work. Okay, so assuming the ads traction channel at like $1 CPC, 1% CR, like this is variable. At the $20 a month offering, the CLV to CAC would be 7, which is great. And then in this one, I just wanted to at the like standard 3-to-1 CLV to CAC and 1% CR, I just wondered what the break-even CPC would be. So if I'm at the $100 a month, my CPC would have to be at most $12 to break even, which is plenty. But $240 for the $20 a month offering, which is kind of tight. So yeah. So if you, but I think we should still be fine. So if you, if your revenue, like if this cripples your business model, there simply isn't enough volume of customers, or like profitability is an issue. There's two main things you can do. Like you're looking for like a 10x lever here. The main one is just increasing price. So like what would you have to do to increase your price by 10x? And this basically means how much, like what other value can you provide, and can you charge 10x more value? And then if you do that, then you can sort of make the business viable on paper. And if you still can't, then you could downsize your goal, but you probably shouldn't downsize your goal. You should just abandon that business and look for something else that might be viable. Okay, so yeah, so that's the Fermi estimate, whether the business is viable on paper. Looks like it should be. Like this maybe could have been a little more, I could have been a little more precise with this, and maybe a little more precise with this. Like especially on channels, like you can like pick a specific channel, like Instagram ads, and then like look at an actual segment and look at what the listed volume of users for that segment is. And then that would give you a precise measurement of whether that volume exists. And you could see what the CPCs are, and you assume your 1% CR, and you know your price, and you can see whether you'd be a profitable venture on that channel or not. And so that's worth doing. Here I'm like this is only one small segment. This is like one of the segments, and like this channel math seems to imply that I should be fine. But of course, is an assumption that we're going to validate empirically when we get out of the building and talk to customers. Okay, so that's the Fermi estimate. Next, we'll move on to the traction roadmap, which is the most important of the three. Now, the most important model, I think, is the traction roadmap. And basically, what this tells us is month by month how many customers we will have to have acquired for us to be on track to hit our minimum success criteria, which is defining how much we need to be making to justify our work on the business. So the way that you go about looking for this is that you take your year 3 goal, which is the minimum success criteria, which we said was 10 million, and then you assume some exponential growth rate. And the most common one for some scalable startup is 10x, and like this, like it also coincides with the YC, like 10% per week growth rate. So you take your 10x growth rate per year, and you work backwards. So at the end of year 2, I would need 1 million customers. I'm sorry, 1 million ARR, and at the end of year 1, need 100K ARR. And then how many customers is that? And then so again, I put this at the 100 a month offering and the 20 a month offering. So at the end of year 1, let's just assume the $20 a month offering, I would need 500 customers. At the end of year 2, I would need 5,000. At the end of year 3, I would need 50,000. And then, so the total conversion rate from number of leads to number of customers is 1%. So this column over here is going to be 100 times this column. So in year 1, I will have to have attracted 50,000 leads. In year 2, 500,000. Year 3, 5 million. And then the conversion rate from an unaware visitor to like a trial to purchase, like that whole loop is 1%. Inside that, it like is variable, but you can say 10% from leads to trial, and then 10% from trial to purchase. So this would be those values. So this is just like, so basically this is the traction roadmap just for each of the end of 3 years. But we also want to do this on a month by month basis, just so that we can, while we're operating the business, we can just look at whether our progress is on track, and then just pivot or work harder or do whatever you need to do to maintain the goal. And then we also are going to run these 90-day cycles where every 90 days, every 3 months, we check back our traction roadmap and see if we're meeting our goals or not. And if we're not meeting them, then we need to pivot something in the business model. Like this could be a customer segment change. This could be like the solution that you're building change. It could be like a pricing change, like very fundamental shifts. And if you're still not reaching them after 2 90-day cycles, you should probably abandon the business and work on something else. So, and like it's good to time box stuff, right? Because if you don't time box, you could like work on something forever and you're like this zombie startup. And lots of startups wish that they had pivoted sooner. So this 90-day external accountability thing is great. And this traction roadmap is the thing that keeps us accountable. Okay, so I have these month to month all the way to year 3. And so I had like ChatGPT generate this. I basically tell them the inputs like assume at the end of 12 months that there's or at like, so after a whole, like for a whole year, I will have needed to acquire 500. So like the sum has to add up to 500. Yeah, okay, I wrote these with the $100 a month offering. Okay, so the sum would have to add up to 100. Year 2, 1,000. Year 3, 10,000. Assume a 10x growth rate, and then make the first 3 months 0, and then have the first year linear, etc. So you can just give it the inputs; it'll calculate the math for you, and then print out this table. So so first I did it where just straight month by month 10x annual growth rate, and that's what this is, and that's why it's like 0 for a while and then explodes at the end because it's exponential. But like I didn't know this GPT screw up the math here. It doesn't matter anyway because you want to do this. You want to assume the first year is linear growth and the remainders are exponential, because at the start of an exponential curve, linear growth is like a good approximation, and you have to have like an initial value of 0. So this is basically, this is the traction roadmap for this business, like this one right here, assuming the $100 a month offering. So the first 3 months, we assume that we're pre-revenue because we're spending this time getting from channel customer fit to customer problem fit, and then to problem solution fit. Problem solution fit is this like end of month 3 value. And so like there's lots of circles, there's lots of discovery experiments, like lots of unknowns that you're just figuring out. You're like inviting the unknown unknowns. There's lots of volatility, lots of surprise, lots of ways to benefit from, you know, the unexpected here. And then so our goal, our problem solution fit criteria, which is this 90-day 3-month goal, is we have to acquire 2 customers. Like 2 customers will have had to have gave us money, basically, like pre-ordered, or like maybe you could do this proxy of like credit card free trial, like they give your credit card to sign up, and then but then if you use that as a proxy, then 2 would not be the number, right? Because not all people who do a credit card free trial end up purchasing. Like some percent do. So let's say like 10% do. It might be smaller than that or bigger than that. But if suppose 10%, then you will actually have needed this number to be 20, right? So 2 is like assuming a pre-order, like cash in hand. And so for us to get 2 customers at our 1% conversion rate, we need to have acquired 200 leads, like 200 people coming to the site, right? And like you should really focus on this. This is the leading measure, the new leads. This is the lagging measure, right? This results from this. So this is where you should be focusing your energy and making sure that you're getting this number of leads in. Because if your funnel is converting at 1%, which it might be, then you'll have this. And if you're getting this number of leads and you're still not reaching this, then your conversion rate sucks and you need to improve that. And those are improvements along the funnel. But you have to at least have reached the required number of leads for you to say, oh, this business isn't working, we need to change something. Like if you've acquired 50, like people will say, I haven't acquired 2 new customers, this is a problem. But then you ask them how many leads they've acquired and maybe there's 50. Well, that assumes like a 4% conversion rate or just like some exorbitant conversion rate. So you stay scientific, stay rigorous, start with the leading measures. So really you're looking at this column, the number of new leads you need to be bringing, but this is determining whether you're pivoting or persevering or iterating and stuff. So this is the goal, and then here's the end of year 2 goal, and like the sum of all these numbers adds to 100 from up there, etc., all the way to the end. And then I redid it with a $20 a month, also 10x. So this is pure exponential growth all the way through. GPT made a mistake. I didn't realize that. But we want to use the linear model for the first year anyway. So this is what it would look like. So I would need to acquire 11 customers, which is a lot. Sounds like a lot. And that's 1,100 leads, which is like, 30, 40 leads a day or something, which is like kind of doable. But this is the traction roadmap. And then this is like not necessary, but I was just, well, you can actually kind of look at this too. But it's like month by month, what is the cumulative number of customers that you've brought in, assuming the $20 a month product at 10x growth rate. And so like this last number should be 50,000 here. That's also good to know. So yeah, so this is the goal. So now that we've we've made these models, we've listed all our assumptions on the lean canvas, like we've written down our business model on the lean canvas, and then we verified that it's viable on paper with the Fermi estimate. And now we have this traction roadmap, which is basically our like constant guide. Like we staple this to our forehead and look at it every day in the mirror to make sure that we're on track to hit this stuff. So now that we have this model that is determining, that gives us external accountability for whether we're making meaningful progress, now we start these 90-day cycles where we define some goal, and that goal is always going to be the traction goal 3 months later. So that's the goal. And then you decide what campaigns you want to run to accomplish that goal, right? And so basically you look at the constraint in your funnel. So let's say you're at equilibrium, you have repeatability. Let's say you're measuring the conversion rate from one step to another, and the weakest step is from retention to revenue, for example, or something, or from like activation to revenue, or to activation to retention. Then you run a bunch of, then you like designs, you like brainstorm different campaigns that might improve that conversion rate, and then now you go run a bunch of 2-week sprints trying to improve that to something that's that matches your assumptions that make your business model work. And then once you do that, then there's a new bottleneck in the funnel, and then you again brainstorm campaigns and run these sprints, run these experiments, cohort analysis, A/B tests, etc., to improve those conversion rates. If you're pre-repeatability, meaning people are not making it all the way to the end of the funnel, then the constraint is just that last funnel step that people are making it to. And you need to push them along to the next one. And so right now, in our funnel, the constraint is the acquisition step, just getting them in, right? And then after that, having some percentage. So if we have enough people being acquired, entering the funnel, then the next step is having some of them convert to registration, for example, like actually signing up. And then if you have registration, then the next step is getting to activation, like delivering some meaningful value, then getting to retention, revenue, etc. And so for the first 90 days, we want to get to problem solution fit, which is basically having people show that they're going to use the product before you've actually built it. So at scale, what this would be is having 110 people. So you have some landing page describing what your product is and what it does, and you have 110 people sign up to use it. And the reason why that's a fine proxy for having 11 customers acquired is because if you assume this 10% trial to revenue conversion rate, then you would have acquired 11 customers. Um, so so when you get to problem solution fit, it's a combination of actual pre-orders. So you want to like have like a handful of pre-orders, which you're getting from like very high touch sales, like one-on-one. You're talking to them for a while, making the sale, making the demo in person, and acquiring maybe like let's say 4 of these new customers are actually paying you money pre-orders in this high touch fashion, but you simply don't have enough time in your day to keep doing this, and so you need a more scalable approach to acquire the remaining customers. And so the landing page thing is viable. So you have a landing page, people sign up, they give their credit, like it's a credit card um, free trial sign up, for example, and then after they've done so, you say, hey, you're on the waiting list, awesome, thank you. um, or you could do non-free, non-credit card based, and then so then you would need even more signups, assuming that. Um, and so that's how like you're getting to this 11 customers acquired without having built something. You're measuring the number of people who say, okay, I want to try your thing. And once you've had this, the next step is actually going away for a month and building it and then coming back and delivering it to those people. And while you're doing that, you still have this flywheel going. Everything that you were doing to get these 11 customers, you have to now make a repeatable process, so that each month it keeps happening and keeps bringing in people according to the traction roadmap while you're actually building the product. And then you deliver the product, and then now you move some of those people through the activation retention step. Okay, so that's that. I wrote this like little lessons thing for myself over here. So yeah, assume $20 a month, linear growth year 1. On month 4, we need 11 customers. That's 100 people sign up, or 1,000 leads that month, to 30 leads per day. And so we'll have to run ads. And so like assuming CPC, like $1 CPC, that's like $1,000 per month, which like, okay, all right, could be better. You know, maybe some other like Reddit might have a lower CPC or something. And that assumes a 1% conversion rate, so it might be even worse than that, right? And probably will be. But if you're doing like 2 calls per day and 10 calls per week and 40 calls per month with like a 50% CR, which is the case for like these Mafia offer high touch stuff, that's 20 free trial signups. So the remaining 80 signups or 800 leads has to come from a more scalable acquisition source like a landing page and ads being driven to it, or any of those channels that we had written on our lean canvas. And like if this is too much, then we use another channel that's cheaper. But yeah, so the goal is like you close a lot of leads through high touch to get the learnings necessary to put it on a landing page and start scaling. That's the idea. So yeah, so that covers the traction roadmap. This is the most important tool here. And we've talked about the 90-day cycles where you define some goal, you figure out some campaigns that you want to run, you split each of those into 2-week cycles, and you set calendar events like at the end of every 2 weeks, at the end of those 90 days, just to revisit these things and make sure that you're on track and pivoting or iterating accordingly. And yeah, so that's basically business modeling. So the next step is actually engaging with customers now. So the first step is getting to problem discovery or getting to channel customer fit, whether we can find our early adopters on a given channel. Our early adopters are people who use existing alternatives. Can we find those people through some channel? And the first thing we want to do is talk to them, just ask them about their current workflow with those existing alternatives to see if there's a problem big enough worth solving. That would be called customer problem fit. And then once we've gotten that, then we can start crafting our demo and then delivering the demo to those people and new people, to get to problem solution fit, which is what we were talking about here, where you're collecting pre-orders, you have signups in large enough numbers given standard conversion rates, to then proceed to building the MVP, like the first actual product. So yeah, let's get it. See ya.